Good evening. Good
Good
afternoon.
morning.
Good morning is normally how we start everything.
Yes.
Good morning for you. And
Good evening
what
for
time is it
you.
with you?
10 o'clock in the morning.
10 o'clock in the morning. So it's not too bad. So
No.
I was just saying to Katie there that I've just run out of another meeting at the moment. So I'm kind of a bit all over the place at the moment. And
Great. I'm going to throw some really complex questions at you.
so Katie will keep us right and keep us straight as usual. Okay, welcome. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bruce Rose from Alcohol Recovery Scotland here in the UK. And I work exclusively with men and women with the Sinclair method here in the UK. And I'll let Katie introduce herself.
My name's Katie Lane. Yeah, I'm a success story of the Sinclair method. Started it 4 years ago, was on it for a year, and it just radically changed my relationship to alcohol to the point where I was able to kind of forget to drink. And I haven't drank in 3 years because of this method. So I've been an advocate for it ever since, and have worked with one-on-one with people. And now we've launched the Sinclair Method community platform as well for people. So happy to be here.
Thank you very much. So, and we normally have a huge big discussion about what we're going to discuss, but we've kind of just jumped on this at the very last minute. So we're just going to go with whatever the expression is. We're just going to go with the flow tonight. So,
yeah.
So we might just start off with a couple of just discussions or subjects, and then we can go into any questions if anyone has any as we go through the whole thing. So, what's a good subject? A good subject to start with, Katie.
Well, something that's top of mind for me is what's come up with another TSMer who I trust and respect and am friends with, and they've been talking about, really the potential of what if the Sinclair method could have an even higher success rate than 78%, and what would it take to get someone to extinction faster so that those people who kind of get on this method and maybe doing it themselves can get there twice as fast. And instead of taking 2 years, it could take 1 year. Instead of 1 year, it could take 6 months. And so I would love to hear from you, because some of the things they've brought up is, of course, information and resources. And another thing is that one-on-one coaching support, like what you do with your program, where you can easily pinpoint, the area for improvement for them, reflect back to them where things are going well, where they could do better, just be that source of accountability. So, that's, of course, 78% is an amazing success rate, but I'm just curious, in your mind, what is it that would help people reach extinction faster and potentially help the success rate even be more than 78%?
Good question. I put a little notice up on my Facebook today to say that you and I were going to be doing a discussion, and it actually works out really well with that question, just to come on and hear about why the Sinclair method is different to other models, and why we have a 78% success rate. I never, you know the story. I never believed that when I first heard about it. Just never believed it at all. So the 78% success rate is genuine. It took me a long time to believe it. It took me a long time to get my head around it, that it actually did work that way. But I do think it's going to be higher. I think it was you that said it, Katie, last time we spoke, or on some meeting we were chatting on recently, that the 22% in the clinical trials it didn't work for them because they didn't take the medication. So that kind of leads towards, I think the clinical trials were showing a 78% success rate, so that's what we have to say. But it comes down to human error, I suppose it is, where I find that if people stick to taking the medication, stick to a reduction program, and stick to sending me drink diaries, on the whole, I've got to be very careful how I say this on a public forum, but on the whole, it works for almost everybody. Which, if people stick with it, they go through the step-by-step processes. I haven't seen anyone that it works with. But interesting, when you're saying how can we increase that, I look at that occasionally, and from what we do here in Scotland, we're starting to become a bit stricter with the assessments that we do, because I've noticed that the people that it doesn't work for, the reason they stop taking the medication, on the whole, is because somebody has pushed them onto the program. It's a partner, it's a friend, it's a parent, it's something else. They've pushed them into the program. So it comes down to their motivation. If they want to do the program, it works. And I don't mean that in regards to some peer support groups where they say, if you work the program, it works. So therefore, if you relapse, you obviously haven't worked the program. That's a different kettle of fish. But if with what we're doing, I think if people genuinely just take the medication and go through the reduction program, and they have the motivation to do it, it works pretty much right across the board. And how do we get there faster? I think I'm a huge advocate of one-to-one coaching. That's just me. Obviously, we can talk about it later on. That you're looking at putting a platform together at some point down the track. Well, you are already. Sorry. So that gives an amazing foundation right across the board. So with all that side of it, plus with one-to-one coaching, I've realized that the reduction side in the Sinclair method is very, very independent. For anyone that doesn't know, Katie has been running for a number of years Zoom meetings for people. And what I've found on the Zoom meetings is that there's a lot of information we can give to people, like we can here, that is very generic. It's very much you pill 1 hour before you have a drink, keep a diary. So there's a lot of very generic information, or a lot of generic information. However, each person's individual walk through that process is all dependent on their past experiences, how much they've been drinking, how long they've been drinking for, what's their current circumstances. So the speeding up the process, I think, can definitely happen with one-to-one support. Yeah. So what do you think?
No, I think I just want to echo everything you said, that I think that, there can be some shame or feeling like, this is such a grassroots method for people that they get on it and they're like, oh, I don't need coaching, or I don't need extra support. I can just do it on my own. And that's true. Like, not everyone needs that coaching, but I just see time and time again, even the best performers and athletes and business people, they all have coaches. And it's not because they lack skill, but because they want to be better. They want to keep improving. And so I think that's the power of what coaching can do. People can go round and round in circles on the Sinclair method with a challenge of like, why do I keep drinking out of habit? Or, why am I not complying completely? Or, all these common things people have. And if you're working with a coach, especially regularly, it's like the coach can easily give a different perspective, assess the situation, understand what is causing that, and give you, steps to move forward and a place to focus on for the next week to get out of that trap you're in. And so I think that it can be really beneficial for people to speed that process along. And you touched on motivation, which I also think that is like, I think that's the number one reason why the method doesn't fail for people. If they're not, intrinsically driven to see success, like if they're doing it for them, not doing it for themselves, or like you said, if they're doing it for family or something. Because if you have that motivation, then everything else is going to follow. You're going to comply. You're probably going to seek extra support. You're going to be looking forward to that life ahead of you. And so, and that, sometimes it just takes people longer to get there. And I know when there are people that aren't fully complying with it and wondering why, it's like, okay, well, maybe you're not ready for it yet, but what else can you do to start, thinking about the life you want to have, or slowly shifting habits in your life that are, more oriented towards self-care or things like that. And so, there are ways to, work toward motivation and get to that place. Because I've known people who've done the method 3 times, and the 3rd time it finally stuck, because that's when their motivation was finally there for it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I've just very quickly, we've had some new people come on. If anyone's got any questions, or you'd like to ask anything about the Sinclair method or anything that we raise, please feel free to stick it in the chat, and we'll get to it. So the other thing I was thinking about as well was that it was something I learned very early on in the days of the Sinclair method, was that there was, with anyone who's caught in dependency, there's two very, very specific sides to the whole process. And one side is the craving and the addiction, which is the physical, neurological process that's happening in the brain. The other side is the habitual, emotional, psychological reasons why people drink. So the medication itself is dealing directly with the neurological addictive process that's happening in the brain. So the medication 100% will deal with that side of it. And then on the other side, so I'm just kind of explaining this for anyone that's new to the whole process. On the other side of it, we've got the habit and the emotional side, which is what we do and what all the support and that side of it is. And what I've realized is that people move through that process at different speeds and different speeds depending on the background and like you were just saying, Katie, just to do with that. Yeah. But it's I have never seen a program like it, and I know you're the same, Katie, which is why you do what you do. It's just the hard part that we're finding at the moment with Katie and I is just that trying to get across to other people how good the program is.
Yeah. So many people are stuck in that like abstinence only mindset. And because I'm part of like free Facebook groups where it's, drink reduction or sober groups. And I try to communicate about the Sinclair method. And it's just like, some people are totally opposed to it. Some people, it just goes over their head. You can tell that they just don't even know what you're saying. And so it's a totally new concept. So, we're trying to kind of help people think about addiction treatment differently and realize that there's not this like abstinence only way. And so it's interesting to see how that plays out with people who are, doing like the 30-day challenges or doing a day one again and all of that. It's really interesting.
Yeah. I was speaking to a guy here. Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. No, I was going to change the subject. Go ahead.
No, I wasn't really on subject. So.
Oh. Well, earlier you mentioned that you do a drink reduction program, and I just wanted to see if you would elaborate on that more because I was curious what you meant by that.
Yeah, I was just explaining actually. Well, I kind of talked to most people about it. There's a big difference between. In my background was alcohol and drug rehab centers, and we used to do specific programs on what are your triggers and what causes this and how and family relationships and how to deal with all that sort of social, emotional, psychological kind of side of things. So we dealt very well with that. But what I realized is that when you start to understand the science behind addiction and what is happening in a neurological process in the brain, it then makes the whole process of recovery, it makes it so obvious, it makes it so logical and simple and everything else. But like you were saying, Katie, that when someone's in the middle of that whole thing, whether you're a sports person, a business person, when you're in the middle of the whole process, it can seem quite complicated. It can seem you can't see the wood for the trees. Is that the expression?
Yeah.
So there are little things that because when I'm working with clients all the time, I see on average, I would say 90 to 95% of clients who start taking the medication, whether they're drinking a bottle of wine a day or drinking a bottle of vodka a day, they will see a 30 to 50% drop within the first week to 2 weeks. Now, the medication sits on the receptor, it reduces the amount of endorphin being released. That stops the brain from chasing the huge amount of drink that they're drinking. And within a week to 2 weeks, there's always a 30 to 50% drop. I would say 95% of the cases. Then it levels out. And then at that stage, week 3, I always get phone calls from people saying, I need to increase the amount of medication I'm taking. It's not working. It stopped working. But because we've had enough experience with it, we know that that drop initially is normal. and then the fact that it levels out is normal. And the reason that it levels out and the reason people keep drinking is because the number of years they had coming up towards where their brain then become dependent on alcohol was based on habits. On they come home from work, they have a glass of wine, they have a bad day at work, they have a glass of wine to unwind, they go to a party, they have a glass of wine. So it's a whole bunch of habitual stuff in there. So that's all been learnt. But when someone becomes dependent on alcohol, it then becomes they're drinking because the brain is dependent on the endorphin reward, not necessarily the alcohol. So the medication deals with that side of it. So we get that drop, it then levels out, and then that's what I call stage 2 of the program. And that stage 2 of the program is all sitting down with an individual and saying, okay, we get a drink diary. We then work from that drink diary. Okay, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're drinking a bottle of wine. At the weekend, you're drinking 2 bottles of wine. Okay, so we've got a pattern starting to emerge. So what we now need to do is make habitual changes every single week. To that, a drop is the medication, the neurological process, the leveling out, and then the next drop right the way down alongside the medication is completely to do with habits and things. So as people are coming down, we're speaking to clients and saying, okay, how did you get on last week? If you're starting drinking at 4 o'clock every day, let's start drinking at 5 o'clock. Yeah. Now, that little change, we do that for a week. If that's comfortable, let's move it to 6 o'clock. And then we just keep making little changes in the habitual side, keeping a record of the diary, and we're watching the alcohol amounts dropping and dropping and dropping. But the most important part is because they're taking the naltrexone and the medication, the craving is not kicking in. So that reduction program is very, very not simple. It's very comfortable for an individual to do, as long as they have someone to walk them through that process. Because sometimes my advice is, okay, you're having a bad situation in life at the moment. We don't need to be reducing at the moment. We need to just maintain where we're at until the storm blows over, and then we can carry on again. So there was an amazing expression I heard a while ago that someone said, it's like having a comfort blanket.
I'm getting that trademarked.
For anyone that doesn't listen regularly, that was Katie's explanation of it a while ago. It's like Katie said, it's like having a comfort blanket.
Yeah.
It's a very nice, it's a gentle, kind, generous, graceful way of reducing, because if you hit a life issue, you can maintain where you're at as long as you keep taking your medication, wait till the storm calms, and then carry on the process again.
Yeah.
So that's kind of there's a lot more to the program, but it's you tailor make it to the individual. And there's a lot of generic advice on the Facebooks and everything else, but until someone knows your specific situation.
Yeah.
So sorry, gone on again about that one.
No, that's perfect. That's so great. Yeah. That was like the beauty of TSM from my own experience. It was so nice knowing that even if I saw myself drink out of habit or out of a common trigger and I drank more than I planned, I knew that if I was complying with the medication, that it was still working little by little to undo that wiring in my brain. And so that would allow me to, I think when we overdrink or make mistakes on the method, we, as people with AUD, we're trained to kind of like beat ourselves up and feel like, bad about ourselves and everything. But for me, that helped me to kind of change that habit of beating myself up and think like, okay, at least I was compliant. At least it was still working on a neurological level. And when I overdrank, it was often very memorable. And the next day I'd be like, okay, how did that happen? What went wrong? Why did I do that? And that would always come with insight, whether it was instant or a couple days later, where I could see, okay, I didn't eat, or I was socializing and not paying attention to my drinking, or I had a really bad day and I was using alcohol to cope. And then the next time I would then like plan ahead for it. I would make sure that I ate, or when I was socializing, I would have a water between my drinks. And, it's really great information. And honestly, like those are the most valuable learning experiences. So I was working with a client the other day and he's been doing really well on the method. He's a little over a month in, and he had a really stressful life event and he drank like back to his normal levels. But then like the next day, his hindsight was, oh, I know why I did it. It's because that trigger happened. And then today my drinking was back to where it has been on TSM. But that information, knowing, okay, that type of trigger led to me over drinking, when it happens again, it's just like, okay, how are you going to approach it next time? Maybe it might be the same. And again, it'd be another learning experience, but maybe you can tweak something a little bit where you'll just be more mindful and thinking, okay, I don't want to overdrink like I did the last time I had this anxiety trigger. How can I approach it a little bit differently? And I think those kind of mindfulness exercises or thought exercises can be really powerful. You know, if someone doesn't quite feel ready to change an actual habit, you know, an action of something they're doing, if they can just start to get their mindset right and think about it differently, or, you know, slow things down a bit, or just spend more time reflecting on it, I think that's a really powerful place to start with.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a couple of very, very good questions. Veronica Mace, Veronica, I'll just say the first names. Veronica, if this medication is such a success, why isn't it readily available to alcohol dependents out with the program? Can you give a short answer? No, not short. I'll go on for 20 minutes trying to explain that one.
That is such a good question. And it's something that I get asked all the time. And I ask myself that question too. You know, what I've learned over the last several years of talking with people who've been in the treatment industry or physicians who have tried to advocate to get this method be a first line of treatment here in the US, that there's a lot of resistance to it. One physician I know who was working with the court system here to integrate this into like the court system of, you know, DUIs and things like that. He got a lot of pushback from the alcohol treatment industry, and then also lawyers like public defenders who would be defending people who got a DUI charge, you know, driving while drunk. And so we're kind of up against a system that has been in place for a really long time. You know, the alcohol treatment industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry that makes its money on people relapsing and that revolving door. And so we're really working to like turn the Titanic around. And unfortunately, because naltrexone, well, fortunately, you know, it's a cheap generic medication in most cases, and there's no pharmaceutical company out there paying to market it and you know, tell everyone that this is a solution. So it's kind of been a true grassroots effort to slowly take off. So those are some of the reasons why. What say you, Bruce?
I'm just looking up my wee book. I don't know what country you're in, Veronica. I don't know if you're in the States or the UK, but the story is the same in the States or the UK. The medication was, I can explain to you what happened here in the UK, and it's the same worldwide, I believe. The medication was licensed here in the UK in the 80s or the 90s. I'll need to find out exactly when. It was licensed to be used as exactly what it's being used for just now, but it was licensed to be used with clients who are abstinent, not drinking alcohol. Now, it was used in those days. People were told, stop drinking, take the naltrexone as an anti-craving medication, and it should be the wonder drug. They found out 6 months, a year later that people were still relapsing, so they stopped using it. And the modern day equivalent here in the UK is something called baclofen or acomprosate, are the two medications that they'll use today. Now, Dr. Sinclair in Finland was given an open checkbook by the Finnish government to find a cure for alcoholism. Long story short, by accident, he gave a client the naltrexone medication and said, don't drink, and let's see what happens. That client came back 6 months later completely sober, but he told Dr. Sinclair, he says, but I've been drinking at the same time as taking the medication. So again, that's what started Dr. Sinclair's 25 years of research into the Sinclair method, what we're talking about. So it's not something that Katie and I have just come up with last week. It's got a full 25 years of research behind it. So he found during that research that naltrexone is an opiate inhibitor. It sits on the receptor and it blocks the receptor. So if the medication is taken without any form of alcohol, it's blocking the receptor, and the brain doesn't relearn the addiction process because it doesn't know what it's blocking. If you take it initially with alcohol on a reduction program, you take the medication, it reduces the amount of endorphins. The brain then rewires the neurological pathways in the brain, and then rewires the brain, and it unlearns the addictive process in the brain. So the medication works very, very well alongside alcohol. However, if you're in the UK, I've got to cover this at the front here. Where's my camera? If you're in the UK, there's a book called the BNF, which is the book that all the GPs, all our doctors in this country use. I don't know if you can see it, but in there it says naltrexone down at the bottom.
Oh.
So naltrexone here in the UK and in the majority of countries around the world. In this country, it's an NHS licensed medication, but it's licensed in here to be given to clients who are abstinent. But it can be given what they call off-label, unlicensed use. It's got here, it can be used for unlicensed use. So any GP in the UK can prescribe it if they chose to. They just choose not to. We won't give our personal opinion on that one.
Oh, wait, can I? No, joking. That's such an important point you bring up about the confusion of the labeling, because I hear from people on a weekly basis. They're like, oh, I was prescribed this 3 years ago, but with abstinence and it didn't work, so I quit taking it. And I'm just like, no, like it was so close, you know, to having it. And so, man, if only we could get that changed. It's darkly funny. It's funny in a very dark way that it's just like the opposite of how it works, and how that's how the label says to take it. It's just, yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah. So it can be used. It's just not being used. There are different theories. There's different schools of thought. Some people will say that it's no, I won't go down that road. There's a lot of money to be made in current medications that are under contract with NHS, all that kind of stuff. There's a whole bunch of reasons that people explain it. However, it can be prescribed here in Scotland, here in the UK. We use any private doctor, not any private doctor, but private doctors may do it if they understand the program. So it's readily available. I'm currently speaking to the Scottish government to see if we can get some movement to get this changed, so that it is readily available to the GPs, NHS GPs, because it is vital. When you see the success that Katie and I have seen through the program, the fact that governments aren't, I said to someone the other day, the Scottish government should be sending me a chauffeur-driven car and driving me to Edinburgh to talk to them about it. And that's nothing to do with me, please, nothing to do with me. But the program is the success that this could revolutionize alcohol recovery worldwide. Anyway, yeah. Katie, grab me quickly before I go off it.
No, I'm right there with you, Bruce. I was just reading someone's comment about getting this in the rehab centers, and I'm curious if those are different over there than in the US, but there is one place, and I think there are actually a few here in the US that do offer naltrexone as part of their treatment. There's one that's about to open that is exclusively going to be doing the Sinclair method. It's going to be more of like a high-end rehab center for people that have money to go pay at a place like this. Maybe their insurance would take it, but it is starting to happen slowly but surely. But I've heard from people who left rehab centers, and I'm sure you've heard this too, Bruce, that they are given naltrexone when they leave, again, with the abstinence to help with cravings. And a lot of people come to this method because they're like, oh, what's this? And then they do some research and find the Sinclair method. So they are giving it out at rehab centers, but it's to keep people abstinent. It's not with the Sinclair method. But I agree. If someone could go to a rehab center and get started on this method, get all of the essential information, the first 30, 60 days, and then be sent on their way to continue the treatment at home, I mean, that would be great. But we would still be challenged with getting the message out that this method even exists, because what's been happening more here, at least in the US, is the medication naltrexone will get picked up in articles, and that's happening more and more, which is great. But again, it's not with the Sinclair method. And so if someone learns about this medication and goes and get a prescription, it's likely that their doctor will just tell them to take it with abstinence. And then we're back at square one again, where they're not on the Sinclair method. And so we really need to, I think, yes, talk about naltrexone, but like with the Sinclair method, because if you search that online, you're going to get to that targeted dose and how that actual method works. And so I think that's so important. And I've talked to some doctors here in the US that are kind of, they don't love the idea that David Sinclair named this method after himself. They've kind of looked down upon that. But there's diseases and stuff named after people, and, other treatments named after people. And so for me, it just is an easy identifier so people know that it, exactly what it is. Because if you have naltrexone, but you don't have knowledge of the Sinclair method and you're reading the bottle and it says, take in the morning, don't drink, it's just not going to work. So it's so important to communicate the Sinclair method. I think that in my mind, because I've kind of gone back and forth with like, how do we like market this to people? How do we reach people with it? Yes, naltrexone. And it's kind of complicated to tell the story because it is like, oh, well, you have to take this medication and you unlearn the addiction. No, you don't have to stop drinking. No, it's not an excuse to keep drinking. This kind of like, there's a lot of caveats to it, I guess you could say. But I really think that if we can raise more awareness about just the Sinclair method, and then people's curiosity will lead them to Google, I'm sure, to do a search or other things. And there's enough material out there now where if someone just hears that and they're curious enough, they can start discovering the information that exists on it. Yeah.
And Scott was asking as well, Scott's saying that he's from Scotland, and he was asking about the rehab centres and everything. I've got to be, my background, Scott, I actually know a Scott with the same surname. I'm not sure if you're the same guy. And if you are, hello. If you're not, then okay. If you don't know me, then my background was alcohol and drug rehab management. So I've managed and deputy manager in 2 rehab centres here in Scotland. So I've got quite a good knowledge of the rehabs here. Again, I don't want to be naming any places, but if we just look at the UK as a whole, there are 2 different sorts of rehab here in the UK. One is the private rehab centres that are very, very expensive, that run, as Walter said further down there, they all work on a 12-step program. The other one, which is paid for, you have to be in receipt of housing benefit to get into the rehab center, because the part of the process is paid for by the housing benefit. There is one in Inverness where you don't need to give up your house to go into the rehab, which is an NHS run rehab. And I believe there's one in Edinburgh. I need to do a bit more search on that one. Anyway, there are rehab centers. The challenge that we've got with the rehab centers is that they are abstinent-based 12-step programs. Now, that will work for, I spoke to someone in NHS Forth Valley recently, their addiction team, and they were telling me that it was a 4 to 6% success rate is what they were seeing. And that's the NHS rehab centers. It's exactly the same in rehab centers. It's exactly the same in peer support groups. They will argue that there's a higher success rate. But it's not for, even if it was 10%, that's your average success rate with rehab centers. I am currently speaking to, I've emailed 2 rehab centers, and I've said to them, I would love to partner with them. I would do anything I can to help them set up a program. My salary, just as we're on the thing, my salary is funded. I'm not looking for a financial reward for it. I would be more than happy. I would love to speak to rehab centers here in Scotland. The only challenge we have is that rehab centers are abstinent based, so you can't really run a Sinclair method program alongside abstinent based programs. If you've got guys and girls in a rehab center who are abstinent, then you need to keep them away from any level of or any form of drinking or whatever the situation is. So, however, there are rehab centers that I know in this country that have separate buildings that, yes, if we could start up, I would do it. However, the one thing we've got to watch, though, is that rehab centers are very, very expensive to duplicate. So in this country, I know the costs, I better not say it in case I'm breaking any confidentiality. It's hundreds of thousands of pounds a year to run one. So to duplicate that, it's not duplicatable. It's very, very expensive to run. I've run a 2.5-year pilot project here in Scotland with the Sinclair method, with me, a laptop and a mobile phone, and I can look after 4 times the amount of clients that one rehab center can, with a success rate of about 75%. So yes, again, we would love to do it. If they were already in existence, I would love to work with someone. So if you know anyone, Scott, or if you've got any connections, Alcohol Recovery Scotland, please get in touch. I would love to speak to people. So sorry, Katie, that was a Scottish.
Don't apologize. I'm eating up your words. It's great. Yeah, I've seen.
I'm sorry, just one thing as well. Sorry, Veronica was
saying. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's one article, maybe you've seen it, of a rehab center in the US where they try to debunk naltrexone and like the Sinclair method. And I know some people who are more abstinence-based mindset. I actually have this book, which is a great book about AUD. I'm not going to mention it, but I was like, wow, this is a great resource for helping people change their habits and stuff. But they have a whole section on how naltrexone doesn't work. And you see all these stories online of people failing naltrexone. I'm like, I rarely see a story of someone saying naltrexone doesn't work. Like, where are they getting this from? So just wanted to say that.
And sorry, and Scott's just put up another thing. The second description with the housing benefits. I've been on these Zoom calls before, but not sure if you meant in person. Just wondering if you recommend rehab, as I've never tried this avenue, only ever used disulfiram. We recommend any program that works. Unlike some other peer support groups, if I've always said, if standing on your head and reciting the alphabet backwards works, then we will support it till we're blue in the face. I've been to too many funerals through this process, and I don't care how someone gets the recovery. If they get it, they get it, and I'll support it. So would I recommend rehab? For the people it works for, I would recommend it 100%. It's the best program in the world for people that it works for. The only thing I would say is you've got to, if it was me, I'd be looking at the figures. I'd be saying, okay, well, I've got a 6% success. Have you been to rehab before? Has it worked? If it hasn't, maybe it's time to try something different. Disulfiram, if I can just take 2 minutes just to explain a little bit about the process of disulfiram. Yeah. It's called the same in the States, Katie. It's Antibuse in this country. Antibuse, I've got a very, very good friend of mine in Edinburgh that Antibuse has worked for, and he's been sober for 20 years with it. So for him, absolutely fantastic. It works very well for him. However, the one thing to realize that Antibuse is, it will make you sick if you drink on it. So therefore, it's just a repellent. It just says, listen, if you have a drink, it will make you very, very sick. The main difference with the Sinclair method is the number one reason for relapse is craving. The reason that every single person will relapse on an abstinent-based program is because of craving. They can't fight the craving over the years. Eventually, they have one drink and bang, it goes. So what the Sinclair method does is it deals with the neurological process that deals with the craving, so therefore you can carry on your original life. Antibuse is very good in regards to you drink and it will put you in hospital in some cases. However, it doesn't deal with the neurological addiction process in this. With what Katie and I are seeing happening with clients is once they get right the way down to safe drinking or abstinence, there is no craving. The craving disappears completely. So you don't have that day-to-day white knuckling, I need a drink. There is no need for weekly support meetings. There's no need for lifetime support meetings. You can return the brain back to where it was pre-addiction days. So we would never knock Antibuse. If it works for some people, then do it. All I do say, Scott, as I'll just say, and the same as Veronica with her son, just research it. Just go and have a look at it. If it's for you, if we can answer any questions, Scott, I'm here. I'm up the Highlands of Scotland, Alcohol Recovery Scotland. You'll find my number. Give me a phone. I'm more than happy to chat it through to you, just to give you a deeper idea of how it works, and then go and have a look at the rehab and find out what is best for you. So that's what I would say. Sorry, Katie, gone off in one again as usual.
No, it's important to know, because sometimes people do equate disulfiram with naltrexone, and I get that question a lot. Oh, is it going to make me sick? And I know doctors here in the States who are addiction specialists, and they won't even use disulfiram because it's just illogical, and one has said it's inhumane, because the temptation can give in and people can just suffer so much from drinking on it if they do. So yeah, Walter said, first thing I did when I got out of rehab was bought a bottle. Yeah.
And that's the thing with rehab. It was we had the first one I was the manager of. We had a 6-month program. The guys weren't allowed out anywhere unless they were supervised. Whenever they went anywhere, we would drink test them, we would drug test them. They were monitored. Be careful what I say here. It was like a prison. But on an abstinence-based program, sometimes people need that kind of level at that if you don't have naltrexone. But that it was very not easy. People in a controlled environment like a rehab center, it was very good. You could keep somebody sober, but the minute they left, the craving builds and builds and builds and builds and builds, and the minute they leave, then all of a sudden they hit a life situation, or they have one drink. They haven't reversed the neurological process in the brain that creates the addiction in the first place. So therefore, one drink just sparks the whole thing, and you're back into square one again. So yeah, relapse after people left rehab is very, very, very common, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
I like what Steve says in here. Disulfiram is a fear-based medication, fear of what might happen if you drink while taking the medication. That would be fine if AUD was rational. The problem with addiction is that it's not rational. You wouldn't do it if it was rational. It's very well said, Steve.
And on that as well, it not being rational, it's the more you understand the science of what's happening from a neurological, I know I keep going back to this, but it's a vital point to the process that once you understand how the neurological process works and the release of the endorphins and all that kind of stuff, you'll learn very, very quickly that abstinence-based programs will teach you if you relapse, it's your fault. Yeah. I say to every single client that I work with, alcohol dependency or alcohol use disorder is not your fault. How people respond as a result of being drunk is their responsibility, absolutely. But it's an illness. It's something. It's a neurological condition in the brain, just like epilepsy, like something else. There's too much endorphin being released. That is a neurological condition that needs to be treated with care, support, and medication. And if you put that together, you have a winning thing. It's not your fault.
Yeah, and I was just talking to a doctor this morning, and we were talking about how, this can happen to anyone because our brains are habit learning machines, especially when it comes to things that give us pleasure. And so, just like we can, create habits of good pleasure, like going to the gym or showering every day or cooking or whatever, we can also learn to do it with alcohol. And so with enough repeated use, literally anyone can become dependent upon it. And especially so if they're lacking social connection and meaning in life, because those things, like, especially if you're doing things with others in groups or, laughing with others or dancing or exercising, that's all producing endorphins and even extra endorphins when you're connecting with others. And so if someone is kind of matched with, not really a ton of social connection, plus a habit of drinking, it's just like a recipe for disaster. And then, I think the way the treatment system is currently set up, it just feeds on that and kind of keeps kicking them while they're down, as opposed to, like you said, it's not your fault. It's a disorder of your brain. And I think that was the most empowering thing. I was a year in on the method, and at that point, that was when I was just starting to learn about how addiction functions on the brain. And it blew my mind to start to understand that, oh my gosh, I was equating my need for alcohol to a survival need. No wonder why the rational part of me, like Steve was talking about, no wonder why that rational part of me that's saying, why am I drinking so much? Why can't I stop? It's because the other part of my brain that drives my survival was saying, we got to get alcohol. We need that to survive. If you don't get that endorphin hit from alcohol, we are going to die. That's what the brain thinks. And that's why so many people can just throw everything away to get that hit of alcohol, because it's like become this survival need. And that's the beauty of the Sinclair method and naltrexone, is it interrupts that and it weakens that survival need over and over again, so that eventually alcohol becomes like a inanimate object. It's just like, yeah, I could have some, but no, I'm good. It's kind of like, hey, you want a cup of tea? No, I'm good. It's not like this, obsessive thing. And so it's when you get to that point, I feel relapse proof. I tell people that I haven't drank in 3 years. I'm not worried that I'm going to go out tomorrow and start drinking again, or that if, a challenging life event happens that I'll drink again. And things have happened that have been really challenging, but I'm not going to relapse again, because it's like, I don't do cocaine. I don't smoke cigarettes. I'm not like thinking, oh, what if I go out and pick that habit up tomorrow? It's just not going to happen. And that's what the Sinclair method has done for me with alcohol. It just totally took away my interest in it. And I'm not left wanting, or, I can go to a bar and a party and there'll be tons of alcohol and I won't feel like, oh man, I wish I could have some. It's just like, I don't want it. Like if people go outside and smoke a cigarette, I don't smoke. No, I don't feel like I need to go out with you. Go have your cigarette. I'm fine. Same thing is true with alcohol. So, yeah.
And had you tried abstinent based or abstinent before you found the Sinclair method?
Dozens of times, Bruce. And I only went to AA. I think I went to 2 meetings, and it was just the group. I'm sure it could have been more beneficial, but the group I went to, it was a bunch of older gentlemen and kind of like an odd bunch of people that I just didn't connect with. But I tried abstinence on my own so many times. I would watch hours and hours of YouTube videos about people who were able to get sober, or even AA success stories, over and over and over again, and would have those day ones over and over and over again after a bad binge or doing something really risky. And I would make it like a couple days, a couple weeks, a couple months. And then eventually, now we know the alcohol deprivation effect would kick in, and I would reason myself back into drinking, thinking, okay, I'll control it this time, or okay, what was I thinking? I can't live a life without alcohol. Let me just have some again. Or I'd be at a friend's house and that temptation would be so strong. And I'd be like, pour me a glass, So I tried to quit, I would say dozens of times, like 50 times probably. And like I said, some days it would be sometimes it'd be a couple days and other times a couple months, but it never stuck. And each time I would return to it, it would just get progressively worse. And just like what David Sinclair found with the alcohol deprivation effect, is that when the rats who were addicted to alcohol were re-exposed to it after a period of abstinence, they binged on it at a rate 15 times faster than they did before, when they were drinking before. And so the same thing would happen with me. I would typically return to it and do this bingey type behavior, because now I know my brain was thinking it was being deprived of something it needed to survive, the alcohol. So it was saying, let's store up on all those endorphins because we don't know when we're going to get it again. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. It's an amazing, when you compare the two, or you speak to someone like yourself, Katie, that's been through the two, abstinence and the Sinclair method. It's the craving. It's the, like you're saying, you're not white knuckling it. You're not sitting there really kind of like, and that if you had a drink next week, if you took your pill, it wouldn't escalate into a full blown relapse.
Yeah, I probably would not even be able to finish it. Sorry. The last few times I drank, I couldn't even finish a full glass of wine. I was like, no, I'm good with half. That's enough, So, yeah.
And again, Scott's just said that he drank on anti-abuse, and it didn't make him sick, so it took away the fear for it. That's a very, very interesting point, Scott. Just whilst we're on that, how do you explain this? Abstinent-based programs are they fear-based? They are based on. I'll just be upfront and say this because I'm getting to that point in life now. They're built on guilt and shame, and if you do this, and this, it will work. And if you don't do that, you will relapse, and therefore it is all your fault. So if you pick up one drink and have a drink, it's your fault. Another night, Katie and I can go into it in a bit more detail, but the fear of drinking, that the reason you have a fear of drinking is because your brain is getting a much, much higher reward for drinking alcohol than a lot of other people. So therefore, your drinking will get out of hand quite easily. And there's a lot of research to show that that's a hereditary issue. But so the fear side of it, the nice thing with the Sinclair method is that it removes the fear, it removes the guilt, it removes the shame. It's all it is your brain is releasing too much endorphin when you drink alcohol. So the medication is reducing the amount of endorphin being released, and it allows you to go back. The majority of people that come on the Sinclair method, whether they're drinking a bottle of vodka a day or a bottle of wine a day, can reduce right the way back down to safe level drinking. Now, some people like Katie have gone back to not drinking at all. So fear in the Sinclair method doesn't come into it. Anyway, we can go into the whole thing. And then into rehab. I don't know if you're comfortable to do this, Scott, but if you're happy to put up the council area that you're in, we don't need to know where you're from or anything, but you're asking if I can recommend a rehab. Then the only rehab that you can go to in Scotland that you can't give up your house is is Inverness, or private rehab either in Glasgow or just south of Edinburgh, and that will cost you £5,000 to £10,000 a week. So other than that, all the other rehabs, I believe, it might be worthwhile looking at a place called Leap, L-E-A-P, in Edinburgh. I don't know if that's the same. Western Barton, okay. I don't think so, is the answer to that one. The challenges with rehabs is that you can only go to the rehab of the area that you're in. It might be worthwhile speaking to your local alcohol and drug partnerships, AD something. Again, send me an email and see if I can dig something out and do that. I'm trying not to say this without. No, I'm going to, because it can be a lifesaver. Please, Scott, before you do anything, go and do a stack of research into the Sinclair method. That's the only thing. Now, I'm not looking for business. I'm just going to say that because you're in Scotland. If you're in Scotland, I can find you someone else to work with. But the Sinclair method, I've worked in rehab. I've lost family members. I had a drug issue myself in my 20s. There is nothing, and I'm not saying that just because Katie and I do this, there is nothing out there that can touch it. I will find you a way of getting on the program if it's something, but go and research it. That's all I say to people. And the same with the lady earlier on for a son. I've forgotten the name here. It was just up here. Veronica. If you're still here, Veronica, just do the research. I'm going to give Katie a boost now as well. If you go onto YouTube and type in the Sinclair method, Katie has got stacks of videos on there talking about the Sinclair method. Do you want to just tell us about your YouTube, Katie?
Yeah, and I just want to echo that back to Scott, what you were saying. Look into this, get in touch with Bruce. He has a heart of gold. He will help you to get started in whatever path that is for you, whether that's working with him. He's an amazing counselor at getting people through TSM. But if there's, an alternative way for you, he'll get you set up on the right foot, because this method, like we've said, it has a 78% success rate. It's not like anything else you've tried. And I saw that you said you tried it in your life and you have anxiety and depression. And I'm so sorry to read that. And that is so much suffering, and you can get free from all of that, through the Sinclair method, because it helps to reduce the alcohol consumption. And that is often what contributes so much to depression and anxiety. It's when you can kind of pull back on that without having to be in craving mode all the time, it's just a whole new world opens up. So please look into the Sinclair method and get in touch with Bruce, because it's absolutely life-changing. And yeah, if you go on YouTube and you type in the Sinclair method, I have tons of videos. You'll find the channel. It's called the Sinclair Method Community. And I have interviews of, success stories of people who were literally on death's doorstep with their alcohol, and they were able to get free from AUD through this method. And my testimony, and videos with tips and information. And so there's, I think, over 100 videos on there. So you can peruse those as well. And we're always adding more as well.
And sorry, I didn't read that as well. Thanks, Katie, for that, for Scott. Again, we don't have time to go on it tonight. We have a lot of people who, obviously, a lot of people coming on to the program are suffering with anxiety and depression. It's a long story. A big possibility of it is just ask yourself, are you getting a proper sleep at nighttime? If you're not getting a proper sleep at nighttime, you're not getting a full sleep cycle. And that can then result in sleep deprivation, which can then result in anxiety and depression. We find a lot of the time on the Sinclair method, as people reduce the level of alcohol, the anxiety and the depression improves. Sometimes it's an imbalance in the brain, but we can deal with that as well down the track. A lot of the times so many people that we work with, they have tried abstinence, they've tried rehabs, they've tried anti-abuse, they've tried this, that, and another. I don't care who somebody is in the program. If you've tried stopping and it started, like Katie was saying, she's tried stopping and it didn't work, and you go back to drinking the same, if not more again. You do that 10 times. Everyone else around you saying, just stop drinking, it's your fault, you're relapsing and you're choosing to drink. After all that period of time, the majority of people we work with are getting to the point where they've given up hope. So if there's possibly more to it, Scott, and we can talk to you privately if it's a help, but it can be beaten. I promise you, it can be beaten. We've seen so many people work through the process. If it is, I do charge. I'll just be upfront here with just now. I do charge for the program here. I have to, because we have to keep going, because we get no support from the NHS or the government. However, we do have private funders who have given us some money to help people through the program. So if finance is an issue, then Scott, don't even contemplate money being an issue. We can get you through the program if that's an issue as well. So don't worry about that side of things. So. But yeah, I don't want to make a promise to you, but we can pretty much get there. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going.
But those are pretty good guarantee.
Pretty good guarantee. Yeah. I'm just going to give you an example. I've been working with a guy recently. I'm not going to mention his name, but he was drinking a bottle of Jack Daniels, 2 bottles of wine every single day, and has been doing that for the last 15, 20 years. He's about your age, Scott, slightly older, 2 or 3 years older. He's almost at abstinence now. He's got no craving, no white knuckling it, just one story of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. So, yeah. Okay, we've got a couple of minutes left. Do you want to talk about anything that you're doing at the moment, Katie, or is that for another date?
No, yeah, I can mention it. You mean with the community platform?
Yep. I don't know if you wanted to say it publicly, but yep. Yeah, if you do, go ahead.
We're up and running, so I'll say it publicly. So myself and another TSM success story and TSM coach named Karen here in the US, we have just launched the Sinclair Method community platform. It's tsmcommunity.com. And this platform, we're both success stories of TSM. We've both been coaches one-on-one for people. And so over the last several years, we've both kind of come to realize that, there's limited resources, of one platform that can take someone from start to finish on TSM. Unless you work like with Bruce and his program and you've got that one-on-one tailored support, we're really having this vision of how do we serve the most people possible on TSM and set them up for success so that day one, they can get everything they need, their questions answered, the accurate information, all the way through to the end of TSM. What would that look like to take someone through and help them be successful, help them reach extinction more quickly, help them save time by, not needing to go out and find all this information on 10 different places online. So that's why we created this TSM community platform, is to really be that place where people can get resources, information, coaching support. And one of the most exciting things about it that I think is what we're doing with our courses that we're building out. These are just short bite-sized videos that's going to take someone through the process from the very beginning of just what is this method? How is it working? how can I be set up for success, what to expect in the first 30 days, all the way through to things like habit change and mindfulness and nutrition and what does life look like after extinction and freedom from AUD. So I'm really, really excited about this course that we're building out because it can be done at, your own pace and really rewatch it over and over again. I think Bruce mentioned my YouTube channel. One of the things I've heard a lot from people over the years is how valuable those videos have been to people, how much they've helped them. And so we wanted to deliver that in a course as well. So people have the information, full access to it, and can kind of do a self-guided process through TSM, plus with like group coaching support or one-on-one support. So that's what this platform is. We launched just a couple weeks ago, so we're still just kind of getting started, but it's really exciting. And I'm, really, really honored to be able to offer this to people. And Bruce is on there as well with us. So good to have him there.
And how do they access it?
Oh, yeah. Go to tsmcommunity.com. TSM stands for the Sinclair Method. So tsmcommunity.com. On the landing page, you'll find all kinds of information about what to expect in the platform. We have 3 different plan options for people to join. And on our base plan, you can join for free for 2 weeks just to test it out and see if it's a place you want to be. So tsmcommunity.com. And the YouTube channel I have as well, that's connected to what we're doing. So we're always going to be posting regularly on there, tips with TSM and interviews and other things. So you can also find free resources on the YouTube channel as well.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you, Bruce.
I think in the next our dream is in the next 5-10 years that the Sinclair Method for here in the UK, for anyone that's in the UK, our dream is that the NHS will speak to us. I'll stick it up in a second, Scott. Sorry, I'm a man trying to do 2 things at once here. I should have been showing this earlier on. There we go. That's down the bottom. I should have had that on earlier on. Just at the bottom of the screen, Scott, I don't know if you can see it. That's Katie's website. I should have put on your new one. And alcoholrecoveryscotland.co.uk. If you just put Bruce at alcoholrecoveryscotland.co.uk, that's my email. So Bruce at alcoholrecoveryscotland will give you the email. So, but here in the UK, my dream is the NHS will come and speak to us, and we can help them get the doctors on board, get them to get support programs set up for the whole thing, get the government involved as well. I know Katie really well. Katie's not doing this for her own financial benefit. She's seen the success of it. She's seen the potential. When you work with clients on a day-to-day basis and you see nearly every phone call I have with people is positive. The people who are moving forward and getting better and better and better. When you're working with that on a day-to-day basis and you see the success of this, we go from, I know Katie will as well, we go from being hyper excited about the whole process to being so angry is the only way to describe it.
Yes.
That this is not available to every single person in the world.
It's cruel.
However, we're in a process. It will happen. So, any final words of wisdom?
No, I think
you always have wisdom.
I think that's all. No, don't put me on the spot. Then I won't have anything wise to say. No, I think that's all. I mean, I feel like we covered a lot today. I hope that if even just one person in the chat was helped with this information, who watched this or who will watch it in the future, then like we've done our job. So spread the word about the Sinclair Method. Tell people do anything you can to get this word out there.
Okay. And if you want to get in touch with Katie, if you're in the States or anywhere, embodieddaily.com. If you're in the UK, alcoholrecoveryscotland.co.uk. If you just put Bruce at alcoholrecoveryscotland.co.uk, that will get my email. And if you just email, can they just email on Embodied Daily, Katie?
Yeah, there's a contact form. They can contact me there.
That's it, yeah.
Thanks,
okay,
Walter.
I think that's us. We're normally here on the first Wednesday of every month. So if anyone wants to come back the first Wednesday. Sometimes it changes to the second Wednesday if we're busy with something else. But we should be back the first Wednesday of next month. And any questions or anything, just get in touch. And thank you very much for joining us. We'll speak to everyone soon.
Bye.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.